Well, we have arrived at the final section of the book, Penelope. I've already mentioned that in the Odyssey, when Odysseus, after he slays the suitors, Penelope kind of suspects that he's Odysseus and tests him by saying something about their bed. I didn't really elaborate. Let me explain that though. She says that basically, she tells him that she moved their bed, and Odysseus knows that for her to move the bed, that would require, because the bed is built into the tree, the house. The tree is like a tree house. I don't know, it's somehow connected to the house. So for her to move the bed would require cutting the bed and out of the tree. So Odysseus is very angry, and by this anger, Penelope knows, oh, this must be Odysseus. So the ironic, twisty version that we're going to get in Ulysses is that Bloom knows that Molly has been unfaithful to him, but instead of turning that into anger, he shows that he still loves her and accepts her. So that's going to be kind of the reversal that we get compared to the Odyssey. After all these signs that Blazes Boylan has definitely been there, and that he's still with her is kind of signaled too by the fact that he asks for his breakfast in bed the next morning. So there's this kind of reassessment of their relationship, and Molly, throughout her section here, is going to be wondering, am I gonna serve him breakfast in bed? And the ultimate answer seems to be yes. The Lunati schema for this episode lists the time as infinity, a sideways, infinity sign, which also looks like an 8 sideways. People like to comment and point out, because this episode has 8, quote unquote sentences that Molly's kind of rambles in her internal monologue. And remember too that her birthday is September 8th, 1870. So 8s show up quite a bit in this episode. There will also be some references to the time, but if you're a bit confused about what time it is, what time Stephen and Bloom arrived at the house, what time does Molly finish her monologue, I'm a little confused too, and other commentators are also confused. I don't think you need to stress about it though. The key fact is that it's early in the morning. Like many sections in the book, the structure of this one is unique. I said there's 8 sentences. There are a few, there's a period at the end of it, I think, and there's minor punctuation, but for the most part there's no punctuation. I think in the proof stage, Joyce actually took out a lot of the punctuation so that there would be these flowing sentences to kind of show how time, because of that infinity, is very... Molly's going to be jumping around a lot in time, so trying to plot this one out chronologically might be a bit difficult. You will notice though that it begins with the word yes. There's a lot of yeses throughout the entire thing, and the very last word of the book is a capital letter, capitalized at yes, not S, capitalized yes. Yes, what is she saying yes to? And I think there's not just serving Bloom breakfast in bed, although that seems to be part of it, but also just her affirmation of life, her also, I think, her love of Bloom, which it fluctuates, it's very confused, but I think ultimately she does still love Bloom and Bloom still loves her. There is a symmetry to the book. We talked about the Telemachia, the first 3 episodes of the book focusing on Stephen, and then the middle section, I forget how many episodes, I guess 12? Yeah, 12, focusing on Bloom and his adventures throughout the day. And then these final episodes, I wouldn't say they're all focused on Molly, though we get closer and closer to her as the 3 episodes conclude. But they are, there's that symmetry though, of the first 3 and the last 3. But also I was thinking about how the beginning of the book, it begins with this fake mass that Buck Mulligan does with Stephen, and the first word, stately, plump Buck Mulligan. And then compare that stateliness with this last section, which is just so like a river, like flowing and all kinds of chaos. Not chaos in a bad way, just you never know from, like, that's typical with Joyce, that you don't know exactly what any sentence could, the next sentence could be something totally different. He's very good at taking things in completely different directions. But I think with Molly, each word and each thought, she can jump around quite a bit. Although I think there is some logic to how her mind moves, and you'll start to see that as you explore. Bloom has passed out by this point, so unlike the other internal monologues with Stephen and Bloom and other characters who would interact with the environment in some way, shape, or form, that is not really going to be happening. There's a few minor instances, but for the most part, Molly is this is her mind, pure mind, and it's going to go in many different directions. And you may not, I think like Bloom, you may not be quite ready to handle the sheer honesty and the sheer, I guess, diversity of forms that her thoughts take. You may or may not like her by the end of this, but I think Joyce is trying to show that this is a complete character, just like he did with Bloom and Stephen, that they have so many sides to themselves. We'll get her physical processes, we'll get her mental processes, her emotions, her imagination and thoughts about the future, and so on. I've tried to break Molly's key ideas down into several different categories, and this is what I came up with. Her future plans, events from her life, key moments, but also just very minor incidents as well. Memories from that day, from Bloom's Day, June 16th, 1904. Her thoughts about the male species, using people like Stephen, Boylan, Mulvey as kind of examples, but most of all Bloom. Her thoughts about women as a species, including herself. Her sensual feelings, including things like food, sex, sounds, and so on. Yeah, that's what I came up with. So let's tackle them in reverse. So first, her sensual feelings. The few things that happen in real time are often very sensual, like hearing the train whistle in the distance. It'll happen a few times. And then as her period comes on, she'll describe the feeling of that as she's over the chamber pot. So those kind of feelings, but also her memories are very full of sensory details. And I just get the impression she's a person very into all of her different senses and the experiences of life. And who does that remind you of? And I think I've talked about this before, but Leopold Bloom, he is a very sensory connected person. Next, her thoughts about women. She says at one point that the world might be better if women were in charge, but then not long after that she says, "We're a dreadful lot of bitches." Just as Bloom doesn't seem to have close male friends, Molly does not at this point in her life seem to have many close female friends. So who does that leave her to connect with? I don't think Boylan. I mean, you're going to see that the way that she talks about Boylan is not very empathic. She doesn't seem to respect him in a lot of ways because he doesn't seem to respect her or treat her as a individual. And the person that she talks about the most and connects with most, who seems like her best friend, is Bloom. But back to women, when she's talking about this woman who murdered her husband, Mrs. Maybrick, Molly says, "She must have been madly in love with the other fellow to run the chance of being hanged. Oh, she didn't care if that was her nature." Molly's image of women as having this nature that can include things like murder, that reminded me of way, way back in Calypso when Bloom was talking about their cat, Molly and Bloom's cat. And I still find it strange that both Molly and Bloom just refer to the cat as the cat without giving it a name. But Bloom said, "She understands all she wants to. Vindictive too. Cruel, her nature." Next, let's look at Molly's thoughts about men. The most prominent man growing up was her father, Brian Tweedy, when they lived in Gibraltar. And what happened with Molly's mother is a bit of a mystery. Her name seems to be Lunita Laredo, and at some point early on in Molly's life, maybe before she even remembers, the mother, we don't know what happened. Did her mother die? Did her mother abandon them? We don't know. Although men can infuriate Molly at some points, a lot of her identity at different points in her life seems to be defined by the men in her life. So there's going to be quite a few. And when she discusses men, a lot of times she won't name them. She'll just say he it will be kind of confusing sometimes who she is talking about, but I think for the most part, the he that gets the most references is Bloom. Certainly more of these he references are to Bloom than Boylan, and even when she's criticizing Bloom, there's a lovability behind a lot of it. I found another parallel between Stephen and Bloom. Molly says that Bloom's sayings, he has so many quaint little sayings that they could be collected into a book called the Sayings of Master Poldy. Does that remind you of back in Telemachus when they were discussing the wit that Stephen has, the witty sayings that they could be collected into a book, and Stephen's like, can I make money off it? She has some funny ideas about Stephen because all she really knows is that he's a poet, but she does seem to remember meeting him when he was a young person, a young child, and he seemed to like her even then. But nowadays, because there's this possibility that maybe he'll move in as a lodger, she really starts to get sexual in her fantasies, imagines sucking his dick, and she imagines it being clean, which is a bit ironic because we kind of know that Stephen hasn't bathed in like forever, so it's probably kind of gross. She also imagines herself being a man at one point. It's well for men, all the amount of pleasure they get off a woman's body. We're so round and white, for them always. I wished I was one myself for a change, just to try with that thing they have swelling up on you so hard and at the same time so soft when you touch it. That really reminded me of Circe, the role reversal between Bloom and Bella Cohen. So maybe Bloom and Molly are still a good match for each other after all.